cleaning up my paint and then type on the screen. I don't want to get paint all over the screen or more paint. Okay, here we go. Waiting for infinite plane society. And I'll make it a point to hand out wrenches if you're wrench deficient. It says waiting for me, but must be a lag. Okay, here we go. So what I'm working on is a watercolor in the Penguinotti series, which are, there's a group, you could say a sect, a species of penguins achieved the singularity through the use of nootropics and reverse engineering human technology. This is way out in Antarctica, some underground base that nobody knows about. And over several subsequent generations, they basically became the first, not transhumans, but they've achieved that. Okay. Perfect dog park listening. Nice. Yeah, I was just out after I left the gym. See, I've been talking about the wolf thing. I've been having these strange wolf synchronicities, which I don't even really get into here. I have a separate blog / podcast where I talk about these things because they're just not relevant to news destruction. But I've been having this repeated theme of wolves. I mean, last year or earlier this year is all like weirdly, it was like minotaurs. And they all tell me something, these signs, I swear, it's some kind of intuition. It's like echolocation. Like a bat sends its signals out, and then it knows what's ahead by what comes back, the feedback it gets. And I kind of feel like our thoughts are echoed back to us in certain ways, like echolocation. Well, anyway, and when I say thoughts, I mean like thoughts, thinking, consulting the subconscious, the darkness ahead, the cave. So I like the symbol of the bat for that reason. In fact, I have a bag here of runes that I picked up. So I'm studying this stuff, and I have a bat pendant on it for that reason. Because I think the bat's a really interesting symbol for understanding the theory behind synchronicity and how it unfolds. But I've been having these things with wolves consistently. And as I stepped out of the gym, there's a couple individuals walking a gray wolf on a long, long black rope. And the person behind me asked them, is that I think they asked if it was a dog wolf or if it was a mix, and they said, no, it was just a gray wolf. I have a picture of it, I think, on my Twitter. I mean, its head was above the trash can. It was very lanky, but, obviously, it could probably swallow me. I don't know what kind of permit you need to walk around with a gray wolf. I opened up my watercolor kit and I thought it was covered in thorns from the last time I went out to the hills. And turned out they were a bunch of little spiders. So I swept them off onto the floor, which they look like the garden type spiders that go around hunting. So they'll probably end up in the, I was thinking they might end up helping me in some way. Maybe getting rid of some of the spiders here that I don't know exist, and then they'll probably wind up in a roach motel. And they'll die slowly with all the roaches. They'll think they hit the jackpot. They'll walk in, and they'll see all these sitting adhesive bound roaches, and Dory the Explorer, walking my wolf at the moment, husky but close enough. Yeah, I have a husky, not mine, but my neighbor has a husky right down the street. There's 2 huskies nearby me. And one of them howls. It's a really, really beautiful sound. Because they have it out on the balcony. Now this is from Bing, FYI. So this is you see on the screen here. I being prompted the cyborg penguin with the blue wrench guarding the ice wall. I'm just outlining the main features because I've already done it in pencil. So I've got the proportions and the composition. I'm going to just start coloring it in here. This is a watercolor pencil or pen by Faber-Castell. This is basically the same thing I'm putting on the canvas, so it's not ink. I don't have to classify this as mixed media. Let me see the size on it. It has two. This one has 2 points. I do have a 1.0. It's got a brush on one end, which is great. I mean, I have other things in the back as well that I'll be working on at some point today. And with these, I might be more inclined to try out the brush and do some of the unicursal penguins. I might do a sequence. In fact, I was doing some this morning, but I gave them balloons. And I'll probably work on those next. Or maybe concurrently. This is what I'm talking about. My plan with these is to send these with books. I send them as bookmarks for the Autohoaxology 101s. So if you've ordered it, you probably have a bookmark. All right, if you just got here, I am, yes, mixed parallel media. Let's Go says we need a prototype of this as a stuffy. Well, Violet Pangon had done some work. I know there are some people who are experienced here with 3D printers, and I've had a little experience with it. And I have some ideas for using 3D printing and having a utilitarian, functional piece of art. My first concept was, because I used to have this USB speaker that was just a dog. And at first I was like, well, at a minimum, it could serve that function. But we've expanded it from there. Autohoaxology, shipping to Scandinavia. Yeah, at some point, I want to have distribution international, and one of the ways I can make it happen is through eBay. So I'll have to list a copy there. It makes processing international orders much simpler, and I get better rates. As far as the tabloid, there are just certain budgetary constraints, but I'm going to be selling the watercolors to make up for it. Yeah, the AI Penguin desktop assistant, absolutely. Well, I have a script for the whole Penguinati story, the singularity, the nootropics, their conflicts with the rats in the deep underground military base. We have that entire script. I have a lot of it actually storyboarded, but I want to redo the storyboards with AI prompts. But the concept is graphic novel to stop motion animation using 3D printed models. And I used to do stop motion animation with characters. I was basing it on the Grimm's collection of fairy tales. And I had done a number of these using a green screen. And then the figures that I made were made from Sculpey with 16 gauge steel wire so the limbs could flex and move. But at the bottom of the feet, I glued magnets. And then I had an upside down, cooking sheet, basically a sheet of metal so the characters could stand and walk, and I could do the step-by-step stop motion. And it's tedious, but it's worth it. Like, I would definitely prefer meet verse characters, actual props, photographed nicely, stop motion animation, than doing it all in the computer generated environment. Now, as far as plushies go, I did do some research into this at one point when I was mostly trying to figure out how to make Amazon, fulfillment by Amazon, work for me. And I was purchasing various types of things like this. For example, there was a series of Pokemon knockoffs that were selling, that were very popular on eBay for a little while, and I was able to pick them up cheap and flip them. And I looked into the process of designing, because I knew someone who designed a set of emoji-based plushies, and he had them put into hundreds of CVS's. And I thought, that's interesting. Basically, his desktop computer designs submitted to the company. You get the prototypes, you get the orders. Not hard to do. I mean, I do have a prototype that I've been working on. You know, it's a penguin plushie that I augmented with a number of things and stuff that I found, some USB parts and everything else. I will probably have to work on that soon. It's been sitting in the bag, waiting more parts. It's gonna be on wheels, although I prefer more like tank tracks. The Bob Ross of PSYOP live streaming, says Elephant Tusks. Well, I would do paintings of, you know, popular iconic instances of predictive programming. I did sell a few images of Trump with the ketchup on his face. You know, it's amazing how many people are calling that fake. Like, fairly mainstream, Rosie O'Donnell, I mean, millions. People are at the point where they're so cynical, they're willing to entertain the notion that that Trump would do some kind of a psyop to get sympathy votes. And if you think about it, it's true, but they don't go far enough. It's like, no, it's not just Trump. It's the entire mass media edifice, left and right globally. And these are not partisan psyops. So it's kind of interesting how they can't see it because they're too myopic. Same thing with Trutherville. They can see individual psyops, but they do not see the psy-war. And all we talk about here is the psy-war. They don't even know it exists. They think there's just some, like, a minority of events or situations are questionable, and they do it to advance contemporary political aims. And no, that's not what's happening here. A better way of looking at it is, there's that expression about, I think I even have a note on this here. Oh yeah, about history. You know, they talk about all the time about how history is written by the conquerors. And that's true, but the conquerors today are not writing history, as in recording it, but they're faking it and then recording it. So everything that's faked on the news, even if we debunk it, it goes into the history books. And that's really all you need to know to understand predictive programming. They're manufacturing a worldview that doesn't necessarily comport with the real thing. And if you notice this, you're a conspiracy theorist. And one of the biggest tricks of all, and the most successful, is convincing alt media that they're getting an alternative view, even though their sources, this is what they hide. nature of the source. Like alt media is just a different station, a different channel. It's like it's the same universe of ideas. It's the same universe of fake stories. It's just remarkable to watch. JC says, cannot trust previous events as fact. Yeah, I love that quote by Napoleon Bonaparte. Supposedly said, history is lies agreed upon. And if he's a total fictional construct, then that's some kind of an inside joke that he would have said that they would attribute that to someone who himself is simply a historic personage and a fake, a lie agreed upon. But it's not a stretch, it's not hyperbole, it's not exaggeration to say that our history is not only written in advance, but executed through what we call psyops, or hoaxes, or perception management, PR stunts, with regularity. And the true believers, the ones who process all of this as real, are unwittingly participants in what you would call an ARG, an alternate reality game. You know, we didn't talk about it, but we will today. When we're live taking calls, we'll talk about the fall of Donnie Darkened. Because what we found is that one of the most popular, one of the most well-known Trump is the Antichrist alarmists who got on Tim Pool for it, his name is Donnie Darkened, he was doxxed, and it was revealed that he's a big-time pro-Trump grifter, and he has a side gig as an anti-Trump grifter. And you see him beefing with people like Candace Owen and others. And later you find out that they're friends. And you see pictures of him hanging out with Donald Trump's son. You're telling me that a guy who hangs out with Donald Trump's son thinks Donald Trump is the Antichrist? So these pictures were very, very revealing. And the guy deleted his entire internet history, or he's trying. But you have these LARPers who don't believe what they're saying, behind the scenes being told what to say, and they get huge amounts of followers, and they're beholden to their script writers. There's a reason why Candace Owen and these other characters are all connected to each other, because they're all part of the same machine. They're basically just script readers. They're actors who've been chosen to say things, and it's pretty obvious with some of these characters. It doesn't surprise me that Donnie Darkened would be associated with Candace Owen, who's married to the CEO of, formerly of Parler. And remember, when she turned 33, she was a part of that whole White Lives Matter thing with Ye and that controversy. Breadcrumb says, let's start doing South Pole. I'm an animator. Yeah, I would like to, but I can't afford to do anything right now that doesn't have a revenue stream attached to it. And so, like, if we were to do animations, it would just take hours and hours and hours away from research and writing. And then we have the book to push, and we have the upcoming cyber symposiums. But one thing I would ask for is this. I would only participate if somebody else wrote the script, because that's a filter. I find that a lot of people, for every 10 animators, I can only find one script writer. And writing is really the thing that drives it. Yeah, I don't have time for passion projects. You know, I really don't. And I don't expect to for some time. I'm embroiled in a couple of things. In fact, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. Google has put in like their 5th attempt to withdraw themselves from the lawsuit, which I'm fine with. The first time I wasn't fine with it. The second time I was, because by that time I already had Goldfinch served. So the suit is secure. But Google made the case that I can't prove that they, with malicious intent, participated in this fraud. And of course I can't. That's going to require discovery. And I let the judge know this. I'm going to need to subpoena a lot of emails. But if they are able to withdraw themselves from the soup, it still continues with me versus Goldfinch, which is fine, because he's going to be doxxed in October by the Hunter Biden party, which means then it's immediately collectible, because it's in all likelihood I'm going to get a default judgment against Goldfinch. Check your Discord. Okay, I'll try at some point. No, Brad comes by animation. I mean, I cannot do an animation. I can't put that much time into anything at this time. I have some other stuff happening, but my life might simplify. I have a big time sink on my hands that I'm learning to manage around, but and we did do a South Pole episode or a skit, and it got censored by TikTok so fast that I kind of just said, put this to the side. Because one thing that sucks about it is that you can put all your work into it, you get censored. When we were doing South Pole every single week, I was getting paid for it because I was on D Live and it had a lot of support. Then January 6th happened. I mocked it, said it was a hoax, and they pulled my funding, pulled my account. And that kind of pulled the plug on it. But if I could find a platform where there's an audience for South Pole, I would start it up again. But that was the whole thing. It needs an audience to succeed. It needs an audience. So what we need actually is a marketer or a marketing strategy, perhaps even I mean, I could make it happen, to be honest. I could. But to do that, I would have to sacrifice the live streams. Did you see that Apple announced a new iPhone? The entire phone is completely encapsulated in AI processing of data. Nice. So this is a cyborg penguin. And the headset, I don't even ask for the headset anymore. It just puts it on there. Normally I have a boombox built into it. Well, when we had funding, South Pole was a weekly thing, and we had a lot of people, a lot of writers, a lot of voices, and a lot of creative input. And we had a good 2 years of content on it added into this Discord server. And then we had this plant. By plant, I mean some kind of agent working out of an art gallery in Canada, which is weird. I mean, here's why it's weird. He was this agent working out of an art gallery, or lived at an art gallery in the ceiling, in the attic. And he spent his days in our server mostly posting anti-vax stuff and racist stuff. So the racist stuff would get him banned, and then he would come back. The anti-vax stuff would get our server flagged. So he purposefully tanked that entire server with all this Nazi and anti-vax stuff. The weird thing about it was he pretended to be one of these, like, nationalists, and he's always complaining about immigrants. And he posted a picture of himself once, or showed that was supposedly a picture of him. And he looked like this, Aryan ideal neo-Nazi type. But what's strange about it is this. One day on a Zoom, he accidentally, flipped his camera. And he wasn't the person in the picture at all. And then I dug a little deeper, and I'm not going to say too much more because I could get back to him. But he was some scummy rat living in some art gallery, sure, but he wasn't the guy he showed. I looked into the art gallery, and I probably shouldn't say anymore. I'll just say this. This person was not a right-winger. This person was not a Nazi. This person was not a racist. This person was contracted to post anti-vax, Nazi, racist stuff 24/7. He was paid to do this. And he wasn't alone. He came in with a group of others. So we later found out that Discord has been, FBI has been contracting with people to go on Discord and do this type of thing. So we realized that we were hit by a lot of people like that, which is why I kind of backed out of Discord. You put years of work into something, get all these memes, all this art, these conversations and research, Stuff that'll be memory hold and Ministry of Truth is just going to eliminate it all anyway. And then you have someone come in intentionally, with the intention, of course, of censoring you. And so there is censorship, but it's like the government doesn't really do it directly. They outsource it. And they do it through using TOS and shit posters who flag their own postings. Like, there's a whole strategy to it. And I kept him around. And so part of it's my fault. But I kept him around because I knew what he was, and I was studying him. And I was paying attention to what issues triggered him. And I got a little more info, and I came to some conclusions that, yeah, we were dealing with infiltration. It may have been significant that he was from Canada, because I think there may be some legal loopholes when it comes to private citizens being spied on. So oftentimes when I suspect somebody or I find out something, I don't tell them I know, obviously. That's like the worst thing you should do. I mean, you can do. You know, that's true for a lot of things, not just agents and operatives on the internet. But like, if you find out someone in your real life is a psychopath, you probably shouldn't tell them. Just play dumb. Because if they know, you know what's behind the mask, it doesn't put you in an advantageous position. Now you're an enemy. All right. Blue wrench. Yeah, the think tank was definitely sabotaged in that way, and hundreds of people were cut off. It was just disappointing, but it's okay. Like, we lesson learned. And what I learned was, and as a result of it, I realized, you know, we will never have a place that's not underneath the same, or not reflecting the same interests as every other mainstream platform, because it's not about the offensive memes. Ultimately, what it's about is the worldview maintenance. And they really want to control the fringe. They want to control conversations that fall into the category of conspiracy theory, and they contaminate it with a lot of nonsense. And what we have done is we've separated from conspiracy theorists, and you shouldn't be one. That's just a label that they use to smear you. But the more I think about it, I think they have marketed the idea that being confused is like good, like being open-minded, like, oh, I'm like, for the confused conspiracy theorist. I don't know. I think as a stereotype, it kind of needs to go. Like, I'm just asking questions. Yeah, that's lazy. How about you answer those questions and then report back to us with your findings? Don't raise questions as though the question itself suffices as an assertion that something could be true. And too many people fall for that. The just asking questions is kind of I think it's a strategy. It gives you plausible deniability for whatever be. And then you shift the burden of proof to the person who is now wondering, well, what's behind this question? And then conveniently, you can point them to your website where they get the answers. And that's how Truth Reveal was built. It was built on people being recruited by loaded questions and the promise of do-it-yourself research. And the whole DIY, do your own research thing, or DYOR, do your own research is flawed as a methodology, because they make it seem like the alt media has the answers the mainstream is concealing. Well, no, those are the answers that you're allowed to pick up off the ground and assemble into what you think is a cohesive picture. But whether you're alt or main, neither side goes so far as to say that there is a ubiquitous, monolithic manipulation machine that controls both sides on all events. The idea that Trump would have faked the shooting on his ear is acceptable to a lot of people. But not a lot of them will be willing to entertain that January 6th was faked by the same production company. And that's one of the key elements here, is that no psyop takes place in a vacuum, that they all are part of the same universe, fictional universe. Same production company, above and below. From the moon to Sandy Hook. Rudy and the dog says, glad you're live, stops me being dead. Here's your wrench. Well, I'm trying to get into the practice of getting live earlier in the day, wherever I'm at. Usually I'll be out. Supposedly, well, the whole idea is to be able to do like reporting, and I was going to do some outdoor content. JC says, what do you think Trump has planned next? Well, the next thing is the debate. Lord Laney says, soon auto hoax will be the new N-word. Auto hoax is safe, in my opinion, because unlike flat earth or conspiracy theorists, they haven't been able to, they won't touch it. I think it is so toxic that they won't even touch it, and they won't address it until it's too late. They'll be the last to know. If you recall, after the research flat earth billboard thing, there was no concerted response. Everybody in the media that we contacted, that I called, would do a story on it. There was no like internal memo. Do not talk about this subject. And so they weren't ready for it. They were blindsided, and they've been mad ever since. That's why they broke YouTube over it. Well, they're going to be blindsided by this. They're not ready for this. And unlike the ridiculous flat earth debate and conversation, because it's become ridiculous as a debate, this isn't something they can easily control. There's no controlled opposition for auto hoaxing, because the controlled opposition agents don't go this far. They're not allowed to. They'll dabble in it. They'll point out a psyop, but you're not going to see them. They might even point out predictive programming, but they're not going to put it in the right context. The only one who took me seriously for an interview was Mick Media. And afterward, they had a psychotherapist come on and do a remote psychoanalysis on me, which was free. I didn't have to pay for it. So apparently I'm anti-authoritarian, and I have a hard time accepting that people die, so I make up stories to myself, to cope. Yeah, I call them psyops because I'm coping. No. I mean, maybe I'm coping from how bad the production is. As a film critic, I have secondhand embarrassment on behalf of pretty much every crisis actor they've rolled out. Have any of you actually cried having witnessed a good crisis actor performance? When was the last time one of these actors brought you to the point of actually feeling something? Other than mirth, which is also our typical response here. This is like mystery science theater. Like you're a captive audience forced by hostile aliens to watch bad science fiction until you go crazy. And the masses did. They went crazy. They think man goes to the moon. Whereas we're like throwing popcorn at the screen because we didn't go crazy from their bad science fiction. We didn't get sucked into the church, the world's most successful doomsday cult to date. So they brought back those astronauts. They landed here in New Mexico. No, that's right. They just brought back the capsule empty. Like, who couldn't have predicted that? Calypso on its space odyssey. Esteban said, I'd love to meet a crisis actor in real life. I wonder why there aren't any whistleblowers. And for some time, people ask, why aren't there any whistleblowers? And I think the answer is likely that these are individuals who are more or less maybe witness protection, or they made some type of a deal. But I don't think it's their fault. I mean, they're getting a good payday, but I wouldn't look at the crisis actors. I'm interested in the meta scripters, the directors. We can prove that. You could never prove the existence of, like David Hogg walks around. You can't call him a crisis actor. They actually make an example out of conspiracy theorists who do that. Like Sidethorn journalist, and there's that guy in Europe being arrested for the Manchester event, or rather being sued because he's calling them actors. And they're right, yeah. But just like it's wrong, I mean, it's better to notice the psy war than the psyop and put it all in context. Similarly, You're better off focusing on the meta script and its directors, its writers, and its executors, and not the bottom rung crisis actors. And that's where they want you to go. Think about it. Why was Alex Jones being sued? Because some of his fans went after crisis actors. That's the last thing you want to do. What you want to do is get to the top. I think this, I'm just using the pans. I have two, but I prefer pans, honestly. Like, I think that there's agent provocateurs trying to make actors. I think there are agent provocateurs who want truthers to be perceived as, basically psychopaths, like they've done with Thorne journalist. They arrested him for harassing people. But we don't have to fall into that trap. And one of the things we do here, it's beyond just saying, oh, this is fake. That's stating the obvious. Like, just because you can say something's fake doesn't mean you're skeptical. Like Dave J, for example. Dave J, half man, half troll. I doubt the former half. Dave J is often calling things fake. He says nobody died, nobody cried. But he still believes he's still an anti-vax. And he's still a transvestigator. And he still is a chemtrail believer. And so, no, he's not a skeptic. He's just Captain Obvious. Like, yeah, it's obvious everything on the news is somewhat faked or manipulated. But you can't just say it's fake because my gut tells me. You have to know why it's fake. You have to have the position of the informed non-believer. Join my X322 breadcrumb says, interesting approach to watercolor. I'm sitting on the floor cross-legged. Plain Dakota says, or just be undeniable like your Trump head wound call, which you should go back and trim out compilations of your predictions and dates. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do that. In fact, we're gonna have to make that a point. Because what we're presenting here is a model, essentially, of media is not what people think it is. You need to look at it as entertainment and news media, which includes celebrity gossip, even political theater, the stuff that happens on the, quote, real world. So you have to look at the real world and the fictional universes they project onto our collective psyche as part of a unified whole. And they merge the two. Why? Well, for advertising, post-hypnotic suggestions, conditioning, news bending. Breadcrumbs say, I keep hearing people mention Dave J. Well, Dave J kind of got some attention because he was given mainstream coverage when he said that Kate Perry is JonBenet Ramsey. I only know him because of his online trolling meltdowns. Like, he's more troll than anything. But he's right about one thing. He's right. Nobody died, nobody cried. But my point being is that that's no longer an insight. That's not enough. And I still catch a little flack from some people who are, kind of religious. And I don't attach religion to what we're doing because it doesn't belong. This is anthropology. This is film criticism, media analysis, and I guess we could call it some level of commentary, but not really. Like, this isn't a political channel, nor is it religious. I'm not trying to save souls. We get classified as paranormal for some reason. But my opinion on religion is I don't have enough information at this point to say who's got the right God and stuff, and I hope I don't go to hell. But if I do, I won't mind not having to share space with a lot of the people I've met here who aren't exactly exemplars of what their religion's about. But it's kind of it doesn't belong. In other words, we're looking at an objective analysis of mass media mind control, the last thing we need to do is to divide into categories according to which faith you were born with or something. Your default program. And to be quite honest, I look at religion as old school fake news. In fact, the dominant religion of the day is the MSM. So rejecting that doesn't mean you should go back to an older version of the same thing. It means you need to be stepping out of the box that they put you believers into and reject that, become a non-believer. Non-believers are hated for good reason. It's because they have a point. And then you have these arrogant atheists of the day who mock the religious, and yet they've adopted the new religion of the state and all of its God constructs. Elephantus says they've infiltrated the minds of the masses with gatekeepers. Yeah, everything. Lord Laney says, I'd like to know how far it goes back with their ancient archetypes. Imagine a bunch of old Egyptians sipping early coffee, writing the script on papyrus, primordial newsbender style. Yeah, no doubt. Old school fake news. I think what we're looking at, when you look at news and the rituals and the weird stuff with the occult stuff gives it away. We're looking at an extension of an older, we'll say, operating system. I think what we have here is an operating system. That the power elite impose a hive mind, allowing a few to control multitudes, put us all into a collective Truman Show. But you can't see it because the places where they really bend reality are outside of your immediate field of perception. So there's not a lot of reality testing going on. Breadcrumbs, when you say no die, no cry, can you elaborate a bit more? Yeah, okay, this is what I mean. When you see a mass shooting event on TV, if your first assumption is that it's real, I would ask, what is your source? If your source is, I saw it on TV, you're already in the trap. You don't have enough information. You haven't seen death certificates. It's all technically hearsay. It's hearsay. But if your assumption is that you can't criticize it because we don't know yet, it might be real, which was the truther assumption pre-auto hoaxers, they would say, don't call it fake yet. There's people over there who are sad and mourning. I would have callers who would say, my heart goes out to the victims of the last shooting. I'm like, why would you call in and even say that? Because I'm going to basically cancel it out. We don't have enough information. And what we found, because they would say, auto hoaxers, shut up, give the victims time to mourn. And I'd find a lot of truthers would actually falsely attach themselves to events. I had a instance of someone saying that she knew somebody who died at the Vegas event. And we called her out and she kind of disappeared. She threw her reputation out the window. Didn't think that anybody would be so bold as to call a mourning person a liar. You're not supposed to call it out like that because they emotionally manipulate you. The media is an emotional manipulator. So we would say, nobody died, nobody cried. Prove me wrong, basically. Shift the burden of proof back. And ironically, the truthers are put in the awkward position of defending mainstream narratives against other conspiracy theorists who've gone too far, in their view. And some will even say it, that we're going too far. And I'm like, well, no, you haven't gone far enough. Because if you can't see the worldview as such, then you're in the box. You have the overview effect. It is a paradigm shift. And you may say, well, I don't believe that. I'm like, yeah, fine, don't. I don't believe in unicorns. But what I know to be true is that every aspect of your worldview has been put through a singular filter. If it hasn't, it's like censored or it's been marginalized. Everything that you get from mainstream inputs, it all is going to comport to the big paradigm, and it all lends to the same stories written. This is why I say Newsbenders is a perfect play that explains this. The way advertising works is they know that you have to be exposed to something a number of times before you get a yes out of most people. And so they're pre-selling you on future fake events all the time. We have so many examples of this, and we can rule out higher mind, supercomputers. We can rule out supernatural causes. We can rule in man. We can rule in a new model of media that uses entrainment between entertainment and the news information in order to create a unified worldview and gain compliance for it every step of the way. And we have a point. Look how many people are calling the Trump thing fake. That means that they're thinking. They see it's in the realm of possibility. It's fakeable. If they went any further, then they would arrive at some truths that they might find a little disconcerting. Because if Trump staged his death or staged the shooting, then it also would imply that the fireman didn't die. Or if he did die, then it becomes even more psychopathic, because it would mean the Secret Service all involved in it. Anybody doing photography there that day involved in it. You can prove that the shot where the bullet is whizzing behind Trump's ear, that photo itself was staged. And something else, we have the high ground, both morally and intellectually. They used to put you down, suggest that if you're calling it a hoax, that you're somehow cruel. And like, no, the liars are cruel. It's all projection. There's so much projection. Joseph Goebbels said, accuse your enemy of what you're doing. And, paraphrasing, and the news media will call the people calling their things hoaxes hoaxers. They'll say it's cruel. Well, no, the cruelty is on the side of the propagandist, pushing terror propaganda, inserting needless fear into people's lives. And this is on all sides of the fence. The like the xenophobia propaganda, that's all there to scare right-wingers. When you see this xenophobia propaganda, it's not like, yeah, get ready because you need to protect your family. No, the ones who are pushing it, it's putting fear into your head. These are primal fears. Yeah, every one of these watercolors are going to go up for sale. I'm doing this to fund the IPS Insider. When we were raising money for Mad Mike's rocket, and by the way, he was on in India, and they showed our crowdfund, the $8,000 crowdfund. But when we were raising money for that, there was a point where a lot of truthers, so-called truthers, started accusing me and Mike of running a scam, that it wasn't a real rocket. Brad says, "Why?" There is a point to this. Conspiracy theorists don't have a point. They're scared, they're reactionary, and they're mind-controlled, just as much as their hoaxer counterparts. What we're doing here is fundamentally different. It's a combination of things, but part of it is, inducing a bit of a paradigm shift, but creating a third branch of media. Yeah, auto hoax or GTFO is what's needed. The whole premise was we need to get out of the think tank people who aren't thinking. People who are still just reacting to the screen, reacting to the shadows on the wall. And a lot of them do it out of moral cowardice. I believe the normies and truthers who aren't willing to confront the full-on fakery and call it out as such and adjust their thinking accordingly, they're scared of going against the crowd, against the mob. It's like the mob's asleep. They'll believe anything. Why do you care what they think? Why do you care that they think that you and them are in agreement about everything? Like, no, I think being in agreement with the triggerable, mind-controlled, propagandized minds out there isn't a good thing. Yeah, satanic panic is a type of guard. Yeah, anybody falling for satanic panic on the right wing they have no clue that that too is a part of this, because the split goes down left and right, the political horseshoe, more extreme at the sides, but it's based on the tug of war between progressive utopianism and the MAGA, what we call MAGA, but which is, you would call it idealized past. So the idealized past goes to traditional religion, progressive utopianism goes to scientism, nasatology, the new heaven of space. But they both fear and quarantine from the other side for different reasons. They quarantine physically, as in big town versus small town, or big city versus small town. They quarantine ideologically, left and right, but also when it comes to cosmology, or rather the meaning of life, they have this split on the concept of sin and salvation. So for the progressive utopianism's salvation, of getting the injectable Eucharist and believing of scientism and getting right with Gaia, as in you're recycling, you're living green, thinking about cutting down your original sin, that is your carbon footprint. They also believe in the whole concept of the pandemic and the need to quarantine from the mind viruses of the anti-vaxxers, the non-saved, and physically quarantine from the non-saved. Now, if you go on the right side, yeah, they believe in the traditional concepts of sin and who are the sinners. Well, obviously, it's the liberals and liberal culture, and they call it social contagion. Right-wingers will say, we can't be exposed to these liberal leftist ideologies and ideas in the schools, especially because they'll catch these ideas. That's why they're always about going to libraries and getting rid of books that contest gender binary, for example. They're trying to prevent the spread of wing memes into their communities. That's why Jason Aldean was just on Tucker Carlson. So Jason Aldean, shooting, he was 33 at the time, if you recall. But Jason Aldean is the one who wrote the song, Try That in a Small Town. And the video had a chorus where a famous or infamous lynching had taken place. From the 2020 BLM riots. So that in a small town, what does that mean? Well, obviously, it alludes to looting, to rioting, and to the lynching. So it was obvious. It was so obvious that they took the video down. They changed it. They took out the BLM scenes. So Jason Aldean is there on Tucker Carlson, and they're both playing dumb. They're like, oh no, it's just a random courthouse. It had nothing to do with anything. Try that in a small town. Doesn't mean anything. Typical. It's disingenuous because it was obviously provocation, but they're playing dumb. But my point is, big city, small town. This is this other one of these splits down the middle in terms of the world stage. And Tucker Carlson had said certain types of, and I actually have I was listening to it earlier, I have notes here. And weirdly enough, look at my note paper. I picked this up at a thrift shop. It's from Boeing. Communications Privacy Equipment Peace Shield. USAF Boeing ITT. So I don't work for Boeing. I found this. He said, certain types of crazy anti-human behavior, the deeper truth is it only happens in big cities. Right. It only happens in big cities. So this ties into the idea, though, of the right and their moral, ideological segregation and physical segregation from the left. It's this return to MAGA, the utopianism of the past. But then, and this is just one aspect of it, though, one part of the split. But then the satanic panic comes in where now this is where QAnon fits into it. The satanic panic, if you notice, it's very partisan. And it's because what they've done is they brought back the old concept of sin back to the forefront. So now it's literally about good and evil. Listen to what Tucker says about the aliens are evil, or Candace Owens says it's about good versus evil now. They put it in those terms, good versus evil, because the right responds to traditional concepts of sin, and the left is still on mind viruses and physical viruses. So again, who's for the censorship? The left. Who's for free speech absolutism? The right. And that's because the right doesn't believe in mind viruses, doesn't see these things as a threat, or at least their own. But as a rule, the left is terrified of mind viruses. Like we're all just automatons, and if we hear something, we're just going to respond. That's what they want you to think, but it shows in every single mass shooting. Oh, this last shooter went to Discord. It replaces the old narrative of the radical mosques. You know, the holy warriors go off and they do a shooting after visiting a radical mosque in Yemen or something. Well, now it's the incels who are the new holy warriors. And instead of going after the great Satan, they're going after the deep state, which is kind of the same thing. But they're getting radicalized in servers. Better ban Discord. Yep. But then they added on Reddit. Left-wing mass shooters are radicalized on Reddit. Right-wing on Discord. And there weren't left-wing shooters. Think about this too. What a plot twist. Shooters were predominantly right-wingers. And all of a sudden, with Audrey Hale, now you have all these shooters who are leftist. During the shooting there in Nashville at the Covenant School where Audrey Hale shot up the place, there was another shooting at a bank in Kentucky by a Redditor. And this is hilarious. Why did he have to go shoot up his coworkers at the bank? Because he was anti-gun. Yeah, an anti-gun nut had to kill a bunch of people to make the point that look how bad it is when this happens, so we need to ban this. It's like, dude, you should know they already do this on TV all the time. They're called psyops. He didn't get the memo. No, but it's just an ironic and sick joke, because obviously that was fake as well. But he was a leftist shooter, you see, anti-gun. So he comes from Reddit. And if you're on the left-right spectrum, there are some things that there are some things about it that are highly questionable. At this point, I'm off-world stage. I'm not in the info war. There's so many smuggled premises and loaded questions. You can't trust anything. Don't trust the red pills. It's laced with menthol, most likely. What's up, Howard Boyd, Clump, Rudy and the dogs? Elephant Tusk says just ban them all. See, now you're getting somewhere, because we're talking about the monkeypox and how it correlates with the rage virus symbol, the theme, the raging ape, and that's all been leading to. And they want the public to say, hey, there's too much mind junk, too many mind viruses. We need to lock down the internet. And who's going to support that? The left. We're going to have a digital COVID-19, disease X. It's going to be the rage virus. And my thinking on it, based on predictive programming, is it's going to be the rage that incites the right to engage in domestic violent extremism, terrorism, etc. But right-wing for sure. And one of the clues here, now think about what we're talking about. The rage virus, the ape, predictive programming. There's a movie that came out on 3/11, which is a significant pandemic date. 3/11, we had Monkey Man come out. Monkey Man has Jordan Peele as a producer. Jordan Peele did Nope. Nope opens up with a violent chimp ripping people apart. And when interviewed about Nope, even though it's about an alien and being witnessed by a lot of people, he said, actually, no, it's about George Floyd and Derek Chauvin and the spectacle of the video and what it triggered. So in other words, if you look at it from that perspective, the image of Chauvin kneeling on Floyd started the riots. That was the mind virus. That was the rage mind virus that kicked off the burning of large cities, police precincts, etc., the looting and all this stuff. And so what we were given a foreshadowing there with Monkey Man, 311, no, Jordan Peele, and his connections to the Jordan Neely event where the Jordan Neely was killed on the, basically asphyxiated or lynched on a subway, is they're telegraphing it, the rage virus, and they have the power to set it off at any time. So now bring it up to speed. Last year, WHO has this placeholder virus called Disease X. And they said that's going to be the big one. Well, Disease X comes out, and then you have X. Twitter becomes X. Well, where is the source of this rage virus? Obviously, it's going to come from Musk. He's the fall guy. He's there to sabotage free speech, to get the public's acquiescence, to make the public demand that we censor the internet. You don't go back online unless your brain has been vaxxed, your mind is masked. Because of who? The mentally ill. Every single time there's a mass shooter, it's like a mantra. The right wingers say, oh, it must have been SSRIs, he's mentally ill. Left wing says, yeah, he's mentally ill. Red flag laws. And both sides agree. And what both sides are wrong about is whether these events are even real. The modern day truther, the truther in 2024, is a propaganda mule for controlled opposition. JC says, any idea when the digital lockdown will happen? Okay, well, 8/14, so it hasn't even been a month yet. 8/14, WHO declared this monkey thing to be a significant global threat and emergency. Bad Monkey comes out with Vince Vaughn, which I'm watching now, for predictive programming value. A 90-foot-tall statue of the monkey god is erected in Houston that day. And a popular video game called Black Myth, where the character plays the monkey god, is played concurrently by 1 million people. 1 million minds playing that character as the statue goes up. Chimp Crazy gets released on HBO. We mentioned Monkey Man, but then there's also Planet of the Apes 2024. And there's references to Planet of the Apes in the Paris Olympics opening. So there's a lot of indications that Disease X is about to come out. That's when they do the lockdown. HLG says auto-belief is a literal mental illness. I concur. If you automatically believe what you see on the screen because it's on the screen, you're not engaging critical thinking. Critical thinking is your mental immune system. If you don't have a functioning mental immune system, you have mind aids. And the government gave everybody mind aids. It's terrible. Some of us have cured ourselves because there is a cure for it. It's simply stepping back and socially distancing 6 feet from the nearest screen. Or maybe not even physically social distancing, but in time. Like no longer automatically believing, suspending judgment until facts. And if there aren't any, you're not obliged to believe. You can count yourself among the non-believers. Mind aids needs to go viral. And we have a corner on the definition. Mind aids isn't being a mainstream believer. No. Alt media has mind aids too. They believe whatever is spewed out from their alternative sources, alternative shadows on the wall. I mean, it's really not outside the box. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're still looking for the second shooter on 7/13, like InfoWars is, if you're still thinking the deep state's going after Trump, you notice they're not hyping that anymore because nobody cared. I have a theory as to why it didn't have the impact they thought it would. My theory is people may be gaslighting themselves, but real looks real and fake still looks fake. And from a pure emotional standpoint, if it doesn't have a visceral sense of being real, from a cinematic perspective, you're not going to feel it. Look how many movies people cry when they watch movies, and it's because it's just well produced and it evokes. Well, what we saw that day wasn't that evocative. And I can think of what would make it better, and I'm loath to improve their game. But if I was to redo this, I would have had crying women in the background, like screaming, "My fireman husband is dead." You know, I would have that. I wouldn't just have the visuals, fight, 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 Braveheart, you know, the memorial, the Marine War Memorial pose. I mean, it was great as far as the visuals, but the audio just wasn't convincing. Where were like the screams that somebody just had their head blown off? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear authentic panic. Lesko says, yeah, these are going to be, yeah, Elephant Tusk says, Tim should be hired as a PSYOP director. I feel like we're already doing that job. Like we're exposing loopholes. Like, you know, one thing they've done, and it might be our fault, is they've reduced the number of, like, the high casualties and the clown cars just full of crisis actors. We don't see that so much anymore. They know. It's like the less we show, the better. The public doesn't know the difference. The only people paying attention are the skeptics now, so we can dumb it down a little bit. I have some concepts for PSYOPs. We have a PSYOP department that I don't talk about, other than to mention that it exists. The Black Wrench Lodge does exist. If you want to join the Discord server, go to IPS.monster. Yeah, these are all going for sale to fund the newspaper. You know, it got delayed, but I don't want to have this first cyber symposium without copies of it. It's a non-negotiable. So I picked up this. This is some high-quality watercolor paper, by the way. You know, it's like between $5 and $7 a sheet, but they're huge, and I cut them into about 14 by 22. But it's archival quality. I'm new to watercolor. I started doing watercolors about 2 months ago. I mean, I've had some, but the problem was I was never using the appropriate paper. I'd be doing this stuff on Bristol board, and it's not the same. Because when you do the watercolor on Bristol board, it kind of floats around the surface. But on the paper, it absorbs in, and it holds the pigment. And it seems to lend itself to more detail. It doesn't float. I mean, it's literally a game changer to use the right paper. And I had some experience with airbrush, which is kind of watercolor for a while. And so I'm working now with some of those techniques. I used to do some elaborate masking. But the paper's the big deal. It has to be the right paper. There's no doubt. But I'd kind of given up. I was frustrated with the acrylics. Just messy, ruined all the clothes. And I did sell like 1,000 acrylic paintings last year, like these small ones. But I just decided to move on to watercolor. In fact, so here's an example. These are the watercolor art cards I was doing earlier. As you'll see, I do half a dozen or more paintings at a time. This is a concept I've had for time. These are unicursal penguins. Most of you know what those are. Drawn with one line. And also, I'm trying to do more work out, and I was doing a little bit of practice with visual journalism. So I like this certain style of art you'll see in certain magazines, like political magazines, where it's just the ink and then basic washes. But right now, I'm doing this again. If you just got here, this is Bing. Go to bing.com/images/create. And I think I typed in cyborg, penguin, blue wrench, guarding ice wall. What's up, Cunify? I'm sorry if I banned you from Discord. I can let you back in. Someone had complained because I saw like 50 posts one morning. And I think you know what you were saying. And it was funny in its way. But, you know, as well as I know, it was probably highly offensive. But you made your point. Like, if you're going to say something incredibly offensive and you leave it there, you don't know who's going to be in there. And out of courtesy, someone was like, wow. I'm like, maybe he had a little too much to drink. But no big deal. I'm not doing permabans unless you're a government contracted agent from Canada spamming stuff that you grab from Telegram because your handler told you to. But I think we've dealt with all those. Okay, well, you had some great posts in there, and definitely like your channel. But there's some things that have, I mean, you have to have some limits, right? You know who's looking really bad right now, in my opinion, is Tucker Carlson. He's like an apologist for all the wrong people. This would be an interesting couple of months, if you ask me, leading up to the election. It looks to me like there's some kind of controlled demolition going on the right. Cunify says, I debunk all people's crap, including yours. Yeah, I mean, what exactly do you want to debunk? 9/11 was a joke? I would say most psyops are satire and parody. Most of our fake news is, at this point, it's just such low quality that the only people who believe it just aren't paying attention and they don't know what media is. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what else to say as far as like, what are you going to debunk? What's wrong about this? Because I'm not offering a belief system. Like, I'm not a Christian nationalist. I'm not a Christo-fascist. I'm not a liberal, Antifa, trying to score votes for Tim Walz and Kamala. Like, what I'm really focused on here is okay, you call me a piece of trash. I don't even want to say what you were saying in the chat. You were talking about a certain orifice and things that some people do with it, and you kept on throwing Jew. I'm like, okay, so this guy obviously hates Jews, and he's obsessed with a certain type of sex act. And that type of rhetoric looks insane. It's like you go to a truck stop in hell, and you look on the stall, and that's the kind of stuff you see scrawled on there by some meth head at 5 a.m. Like, I don't know how you can say that what you said made any sense at all. So you can go on your little, you fucking Hitler stands are so pathetic. He's a Hitler stan. Sorry, Cunify Hitler stan. And these Hitler fans are just totally obsessed with hating Jews. It's like, I don't even know my neighbors. I don't talk to my family often. I don't know any Jews. Like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And you're like, oh, it's Jews. I'm like, okay. Somebody's online a lot. Yeah, feel free to ban him. Look, he's sensitive about it. I was trying to be polite. The guy was totally disgusting. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Total actor. Look, I hate banning people, but at this point, like, I don't know why I would be in your sights as someone that you need to attack. Like, there are more worthy adversaries, because I literally don't care what you have to say. No, Cunify's not bringing trouble, but a Hitler stan. I mean, what else do you call it? If all you do is you spend your time online hating people you don't know, it's like, I don't have a lot in common with you. And it doesn't bother me. Like, outgroup me. Call me a shill, whatever. I don't care. Brainworms. And by the way, Cunife's chemtrail debunk is half-assed. Half-assed. He still leaves it open to some kind of magic geoengineering or some crap. I think it might be a psyop, to be honest. No, he is cool usually, but look, I don't make friends in real life with people who are obsessively hating other people. Like, I don't have time for that. And at this point, it's just kind of weird and cringe. It is weird and cringe. Like Nick Fuentes level cringe. Like Nick Fuentes is like, all right, guys, I'm almost 30. I better start raising some children for the master race. It's like he's half Mexican, and he's the lead exponent of white supremacy. And finally, he's going to go try to find a wife after he's openly endorsed grooming young girls to get married off at 15. Like, these people are psychopaths. And why do they want to do it? Like, when it really comes down to it, they're woke. I call it CJT, critical Jew theory. They're the same as the CRT. If you're annoyed by CRT, critical race theory, victim consciousness, wokesters, you should feel the same way about these people that are all mad about Jews. They're the same people. One group is mad about whites, the other group is mad about Jews. And it's like, I'm not mad about either group. I think it's a big psyop to get you to hate a certain group as your universal scapegoat, and you build your worldview around it. So if you fell for that psyop, you're not a skeptic. You know, and I get flack from people, Tim never talks about the J question. It's like, go listen to Stu Peters. I'm sure you can find some double-digit IQ claptrap to entertain yourself if that's what you're into, but like, that's not what we're doing here. Like, you're in the wrong saloon. It's kind of a joke. Like, why would you even mix yourself up with us? This is why we're quarantining from Trutherville. Well, I didn't know he was about the J stuff until he went into our Discord server the other day, and he started saying something about how every celebrity has done gross things with, like, I don't even want to elaborate, but he had some theory that involved Jews and gross stuff, and I mean, I don't even want to repeat what he said. It was just disgusting. And someone emailed me about it. So I go into the Discord server, and this is exactly why I don't go to Discord, because it's always full of this type of stuff. I never encountered like intraracial animosity or ethnic hate until I got involved with truthers. That's a fact. Like, in my own life, like, it's not a thing here, really. And I'm not naive. I'm not like not involved in the world. It's just like, that's not real life. Stu Peters is not real life. He's a failed rapper. And when he failed to make a living by appropriating black culture, now he's making a living by hating blacks and Jews. But my point is, this worldview of hating Jews or hating whitey or whatever, these are worldviews that have been sold to you by government-controlled propagandists. And so, like, you can't call yourself a skeptic. Like, I want to hang out with you, skeptic. I believe all this crap. It's like, well, no, I think you need to quarantine from the box for a little while. And I don't give any of them credit anymore for having any kind of point. Like, Eric Dubé lost me with this whole thing. He's like, he's got the most attention on the flat earth topic that anyone ever has. And then he puts out a video about hating Jews. And it's like, look, if you really think the earth is flat, go to some other continent. Meanwhile, he's in Thailand teaching yoga, eating a vegan diet, and has a girlfriend who is like the daughter of some general, but like, he is in no way helping the fatherland. You could even say Eric Dubé's a race traitor, to use their parlance, to use their terminology. Yeah, this is all bubbling to the surface, though, because of politics right now. Like, they've opened the gates to this. It's kind of funny to see how many people are literally puppets of Elon Musk, or literally puppets of the left-wing counterparts. Like, all of a sudden, you see there's this uptick because they've opened doors to these things to be talked about openly. And, like, Musk gets on, Tucker Carlson gets on, and he has a conversation with some historian who, makes the whole point, Hitler's the good guy, which is like a common thing, which I hear, it's not even a shocking thing for people espouse that anymore. Like, I'm like, yeah, I don't even believe that. I don't believe history any more than I believe mainstream media. So that's why my opinions aren't so vitriolic. Like, I don't have like ancestral hatreds. But what has happened is there are old conspiracy theories that have just been repackaged and repackaged and repackaged. And at this point, if you're falling for it, you're falling for some very old style propaganda. Also, I should point out, YouTube takes the blame for a lot of this. At the time, then a lot of these so-called truther, the word truther is so dumb, but a lot of these channels came up. There was a lot of competition where channels treated other channels like enemies, and it was like, if you could put down this channel, you get some of their subscribers to join on your side. I call it the piñata, the subscriber piñata effect. You just hit the big channel, and some of those subs might fall out, and you can collect them. And that's just a bad approach. It's bad business. It's not how you build a network, which is what we're doing here. We're not trying to compete. See, here's the difference. Alt media is a closed system. That's why they're competing. There's a limited number. That's why you have gatekeepers. It is gate kept. This parallel media concept is ungate kept. There aren't any gatekeepers, and it's not a closed like that, where you don't have to compete over a finite number of subs and eliminate the competition, but rather the more competition, the better. Because what we're doing is we're enlarging a third branch of media, completely outside. Joined by Adam Cook. Lieutenant Wanberg says, I've seen Cunife's vids. He thinks Adolf was played by multiple guys, not that he's a savior like Dubé does. Yeah, I've seen it convincingly argued that Adolf Hitler was played by Walt Disney. Not a hard case to make. I believe that the bunker looks just like Hitler's bunker looks just like the home that Walt Disney was at. And you have the von Braun connection, another Nazi connected to Walt Disney. Like, it all could be some kind of major production to create a worldview, to steer the collective for the next 100 years. Wouldn't surprise me. Others argue that Adolf Hitler was, well, hippie Hitler, as they call him. That was a woman, an angry woman, chosen for the role, which I don't believe. But look, there's another thing too. What we're doing is going beyond psyop analysis, stating the obvious. That's all they do anymore. Conspiracy theorists in general, the whole conspiracy realm, is really just people stating the obvious and talking about psyops. But if you're talking about psychological operations as though these are anomalous and they're not all contiguous, that they don't all have a common directorship on both sides, then you're not really comprehending it. So if you want to run circles around some big fake tree because somebody's dangling a red herring for you, go for it. Like, I'm not here to salvage anyone from the Trutherville communities. What we're trying to do here is create this third branch that, by its very nature, excludes that kind of stuff. We go into this new area, we're not going to have Hitler fan clubs. We're not going to have anti-vax activists or chemtrail lunatics. Adam Cook says, in Britain, we have a guy called Tommy Robinson getting the serfs to cheer the flag that enslaves them. Yeah, it's absolutely the case that if there's someone out there who's being promoted and they're reaching some big demographic, they're all puppets. And they're puppets if they know it or not, if they're still operating within the closed system of the MSM box, the mainstream mediated box, which includes the subset of conspiracy theories. Pengu33 says, Hitler loved painting Disney and they have the equipment to pull it off. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all. I think there are even comparisons to Walt Disney's wife and Eva Braun. There's something to look into there. I know a lot of the tanks were inflatable in World War II. Nobody argues that some stuff is fake, but like some are, like even normies are saying the Trump shooting was fake. That's viral. But they can't go too far, or they're not apprised of the real landscape, the mental landscape that they inhabit, to know that the fakery goes far beyond Trump squirting a McDonald's ketchup packet on his ear when he's behind the podium. No, the fakery goes way deeper than that. And if you're not ready to say, yeah, they faked Trump's shooting and they faked the moon landing in the same breath, then you're not there. You've got too many attachments to the other side of the screen, to the belief systems, and you haven't broken through into agnosticism. Jennifer Reese says, James Earl Jones died at 93. Oh, really? Okay. Interesting. I'll have to look at that. Bart Northeast says, Netflix already done Mike Tyson death on live TV. What's that about? You know, there's a Netflix studios here in where I'm at. And they filmed Stranger Things at the high school across from me. But I didn't know Netflix is right here. Armin Reese says, truthers are to normies as Protestants are to Catholics. Yeah, that's a very good analogy. And the way I would describe it is, if the mainstream media can be looked at as a church, the state church, its Eucharist is the injectable one. Its priesthood are mainstream media pundits. This then would make sense that those who are anti-media are the ones who reject the mother church. They reject the Eucharist, the injectable Eucharist. So anti-vax is it's not a health decision. It's not an organic response to some agenda that was nefarious, depopulation, or any of this stuff. No, it was always the rejection of the salvation by what you would consider sacrament. It's really just a reboot of Protestant versus the mother church. It's like they're basically Protestants. And you can extend the analogy even further if you connect the advent of movable type press to the internet. And this is why the truthers are always saying, we are the media now. We have our own movable type press. We don't have to get all our info sourced from the state church. So it's a perfect analogy, which tells you how controlled it is. Anyone know how old Martin Luther was when he nailed the 95 Theses to the door? He was 33. Plain Dakota says, when's the MSM Inquisition? Yeah, the Inquisition, contact tracing, they introduced that, and now they're going to bring it to the next level. So they have contact tracing already established. They use 2020 to train you to respond to the mind virus threat. Mind viruses are thought crimes. That's how they control worldview. They need to expunge, they need to purge the mind viruses that they don't want people to have. So they needed to educate us on this new model of saved, unsaved, pure, unpure, super spreaders that are asymptomatic, the vulnerable with weak immune systems, and the vulnerable to the mind viruses will be those with weak mental immune systems. And they will demand that they are protected. But the Inquisition is coming. Why do you think that Brazil just dropped X? Because disease X. Other countries have as well. But the Inquisition has already been witnessed in another aspect with this mind virus angle when you look at the Christchurch shooting and how they were hunting down anybody that had a copy of the video. How they were shutting down sites like 4chan BitChute. Zach Lee, here's your wrench, says good analogy. Yeah, it's controlled opposition in the same way. I think that you can look at this as what we're doing right now is a perfect historic analog. We're talking about worldview control being taken from the hands of the elite and its official priesthood, its voice, and then decentralized. And then after the breakdown of it, you had the Counter-Reformation. And the Jesuit order was a Counter-Reformation thing. So I kind of look at this, the WHO and its misinformation teams, its conspiracy theories, rather its anti-conspiracy theory agents on the web. Like, YouTube put like 10,000 people to censor, to block, to flag stuff. Yeah, that you could consider to be the Counter-Reformation. They're trying to counter this and consolidate control again. And I think the thing is, they can't control it all under one, so they're controlling it by controlling both sides. Let's control the mainstream and the alt media. And both will exist in the same box. So they can fight all day, but the game stays the same. The world stage doesn't change. That's why I say anti-anti. Because if you think that by nailing this sheet of paper to the door of the church and opposing it, that you're against it, you're misled. We're not looking for a different interpretation of their Bible. We're not looking for a different interpretation of their mainstream media. We're looking for what exists outside of these filters. And that's kind of why I think that the truthers are controlled. They're designed to be. They were never on their way to the truth. It was always going to be alt control, alt mind control. That's why I say, too, resistance is futile. Fighting the info war is a losing fight. Strange game, the only winning move is not to play. That's from War Games. And it's a reference to nukes. Yeah, Alex Jones is the ultimate example of it, and look what he hypes day in, day out. Now, it even goes, you can even add onto this the whole, the Jew thing, as it ties into the idea of the body of Christ and the synagogue of Satan. And you can kind of see how it's syncretism. They've blended worldviews. They've blended belief systems, and they've essentially just provided new iterations of older concepts. That's why I'm confident in saying, and I've said this since 2020, virus, the pandemic, the entire concept of it is really just a scientific reinterpretation, or rather, it's a new version of sin, but dressed up as science. Like a good example of this is Scientology, where their whole premise is mankind is afflicted with crime, death, illness, war, and planetary destruction because we have mind viruses. Everybody has them. But they call them engrams. And they say, if you can purge yourself of your engrams, you will be cleared. And your emotional tone scale goes up, your intelligence goes up, and you cease to behave in antisocial ways. And their objective is to purge mankind of mind viruses, which they call engrams again. And so their whole religion is based on the pandemic model. It's based on quarantining. It's based on getting saved and getting your boosters in the form of going to your auditing sessions, getting the most recent mind viruses you picked up expunged, and they want to clear the world. then we will have a perfect society. That's the pandemic model, but it's mind virus pandemic. And that is based on sin. The idea of the perfect world is not achievable until we get people to get rid of these sinful behaviors. And then, of course, you have the definition of sin usually pertains to, behaviors associated with the other side who do not believe in sin or hell or punishment for sin. So it's not a coincidence that the right wing, and we're talking in the fringe or the, I guess, more conspiracy, but they're the ones who are more likely to say, we do not trust the vax. We do not believe the pandemic is real. They're the ones who rejected it. Left wing believed in it. And they wanted the thing. They wanted the Eucharist. But then you go to the other side, the left wing doesn't believe in sin. They don't believe in God. But they believe in Gaia. They don't believe in angels, but they believe in aliens. So both sides are given identical in structure. In the structure, they're given the same story. The political horseshoe is the truth, that at the fringes, the sides represent, or rather become identical to one another. Lieutenant Weinberg says, I was duped. I thought it was going to hurt people. Yeah, there was a point where I gave them the benefit of the doubt, even though I knew from the beginning that it was merely a construct. And I just waited and okay, at some point you're going to have to let it go. By 2021, I was like, okay, the numbers aren't adding up. And then it became the inverse of 2020, where at one point it was the media lying. Oh, these people are dying. These people are dying. These people are dying. And then in 2021, 2022, it was the right wing. Look, suddenly dead. Everybody's dying. I'm like, wait a minute. It went from what they called the pandemic to what the right-wing conspiracy theorists called the pandemic of the vaccinated. So it was an inverse. And it got even worse. It was even scarier for truthers who believed in spike proteins and shedding and secondhand, just insanity. But the point of it here is that it was never about that. That was always a red herring. It was about getting the masses to accept the premise of this new sin. Like, you look at how the masses have accepted the premise of climate change. Even if they dispute the cause, they accepted the premise that we must regulate for this universally around the world. Everybody's affected by it. Well, in 2020, they gave us a new religion, a new religious paradigm. And now it's not a coincidence either that alongside the new scientific version of sin, we had QAnon come out. Because what was QAnon pushing? Satanic panic. They pushed a panic of Satan, sin, good versus evil, the old school version, the moral panic-demic is what I call it. They created a moral panic-demic or moral pandemic the same way, at the same time. So both sides were overreacting. Both sides were in a state of panic. One side because blood-drinking Satanists have taken over the world, and the other side because of the virus. Like, these are parallel storylines sold to parallel groups of brainwashed people. So anti-vax was totally controlled opposition, and that's why from the beginning, that's why I've been saying anti-anti. I never trusted it, and I saw so many people fall for it. And a lot of people got mad at me for not falling for it. And I'd ask them questions like, why are you so obsessed with saving Democrats? Like, if you really believe this, there won't be any to vote in 2024. And look where we are. Plain says that even the concept of each side to hold to break people, like the left was anti-war, now pro-war, now left is anti-farmer, now pro. Yeah, it's amazing how they're constantly flipping the stuff back and forth. I remember right wing used to be associated with, I guess you're right on that. Something else too. This is another thing that I noticed as well. So the right was really worried about what they called stealth jihad. Like Muslims taking over the institutions, getting into the courts, and doing a stealth jihad, taking over by stealth. And they were worried about Islamic terrorists dressing up as Mexicans, putting on sombreros, and sneaking across the border and blowing stuff up. And none of that ever really happened. And now, fast forward to 2020, and now they're worried about Chinese nationals coming across the border. Now they're worried about China. That Steve Bannon was all about this, that Chinese are taking over the police stations. They're taking over the TSA. So it went from being afraid of this one group, and then they just like switched it to this other group. But there was no like transition. It just kind of, one day they just changed it. Hey, we were afraid of Islamic terrorism. Now we're afraid of China. Now it's the CCP. Like the memo went out there. Very much like this is Orwellian. It's Orwellian. They just switch it overnight. But they're not going to do another 2020. Disease X, I believe, placeholder was 100% a setup for the advent of the mind virus. And the public has been getting an education on mind viruses for as long as Musk has owned X. Joined by Thirst for Truth. Thanks for joining. Adam Cook says there'll be a night of long knives in Britain yet. Okay, now if there is, it's being done by the intelligence agencies. Like if the MAGA ban decides to go burn down a state capitol or something, it's all going to be operatives. It's all going to be a psyop. And then those who agree with it online will still get penalized for agreeing with it online. They'll be charged for incitement, even though nothing was really incited. It's going to be a big honeypot like January 6th was. Did anybody really serve time for January 6th? I have my serious doubts. I really don't think so. I don't think any rando idiots were caught up in the melee. I think it was all staged. There's plenty of evidence to support this. And you know how the event started? You watched people pulling down the railings and stuff. Even when I watched it that day, it didn't look like real hostility and fury. It looked like a bad made-for-TV movie. And it was really showy. You know, instead of like fists and heads getting stomped and rocks being thrown against helmets, it was big flags waving around. It was very theatrical. There was a lot for the eye to take in, but it was like performative rioting. I almost feel like, let's say I went down to the Capitol, and instead of listening to Trump speak, because the riot started while he was still speaking. If I had ran up to the Capitol, because there were some people who were close to it, and they were immediately outgrouped by the people who were there. But I don't think you could have gotten into it. It would have been a close set. It's too big of a conspiracy for the conspiracy theorists to understand. They cannot grasp that Alex Jones, QAnon shaman, that all of their favorite political influencers, Baked Alaska, and all these guys who are there, that they're all feds, that they're all controlled, and the entire thing was staged. They can believe in a staged moon landing, but they can't believe in a staged riot. And that's because they're not assessing it with the proper understanding of the role of special effects. Esteban says, the guy I actually met was arrested there. His channel, Steve Ignoramus. They had stuff on his channel regarding his debacle. He is a space cadet and he buys into the left-right thing. Interesting. Well, the sensitive areas would have been off limits, is my point. Like a movie set. Like here where I live, there's a lot of movies being shot. Netflix is doing stuff here. And you can see indicators that there's like a crew in the area. But yeah, we're dealing with closed movie sets. And the people who are there know each other. They've been drilling for it. The eBay account I'm using for these, actually I'm selling these on Ko-Fi. I may go back to eBay again. It's a lot of, it's very time consuming. So I've been grouping stuff together, like 4 or 5 paintings in a bundle. Add enough. Here is your wrench. We'll be live here shortly. I have a couple of different setups, and I wanted to test this one out. I do want to spend more time live. It would be nice to get back into some of the animation and stuff. I just need to figure out a way to make it happen. The first thing is the tabloid, though. And this is funding the tabloid. I'm doing the artwork to keep the publication moving forward. We already have the first issue. It's not available yet, but it will be soon. Barth Northeast says, that's why I think Netflix Jake Paul hurts Mike Tyson live. Interesting. So Mike Tyson is definitely an insider. I would say wasn't he in was he in Hangover? I know the movie Hangover, was it number 2 or 3? One of the Hangovers had some Vegas predictive programming. Ooh, nice. Plain decoded. Mountain Dew has a new flavor for Halloween, voodoo with the spirit coming from a grave. Okay, every time Mountain Dew has a flavor, it correlates to something on the world stage. Like the Star Spangled Splash as the Francis Scott Key Bridge splashes into the water. Many other examples that we've discussed, Maui, Dew Blast. But what would voodoo pertain to? Well, incidentally, right now, one of the trending stories is that Haitian immigrants are eating ducks, cats, and practicing voodoo, animal sacrifice rites, and it's being talked about all over Twitter. I don't believe it necessarily. Like, remember how easy it is for people to believe stuff, by the way. Like, it's so easy. Look how many people believe that Democrats are drinking adrenochrome. Nobody's talking about that anymore. People would say, oh, Hillary looks tired because the adrenochrome supply has been cut off because the white hats have bombed the tunnel where the children are being transported. Right. Well, nobody believes that anymore, but they did then. And so they're told Haitian immigrants are cannibals. And then the story goes viral and everyone thinks it's true. And then later you find out that not only is it not true, but that the stories of cannibalism originated from the Haitians themselves. Certain gangs would spread rumors that they were doing it to scare the other gangs. But there was no real widespread cannibalism. Video you saw was likely a Halloween prop from an unrelated event. So until you see anything as far as like facts to substantiate these rumors, I would probably say nothing there. But it is interesting because I did see that it was trending. Dog food too. Oh yes. Laura Loomer eating dog food. Yeah, I just saw her today on Twitter. She was criticizing some Haitian who was carrying a goose. And I was like, that's actually more normal than eating a dog food out of the bag. It might not be legal. He may not have a hunting permit. You know, this individual who was spotted carrying a goose, but you know he's going to eat the goose. Yeah, Loomer's ignorable. The only reason I pay attention to her is because she's in this special area. I don't know if she has clearance or what, but if you recall, she's the one who made the story go viral about the Atlantic when it had the number 47 and a bullet hole. And she said, Alex Soros is planning to shoot Trump. This is a threat. Even Elon Musk commented on it. Ryler says, any attention towards her is not... No, look, my take on it is double down. Anything that is on the news, any one of these characters, I don't believe that you should ignore them. I believe you should deconstruct them. But what she represents, though, is, okay, so she's given certain amount of leeway in order to take the conversation away from those who understand what predictive programming is. So that was months ago. And then just weeks before the Trump thing, you have that other piece from the Atlantic that literally has his ear clipped where it was fake shot. So it's important to, like, I don't believe in escapism. If I did, I wouldn't even talk. I'd be out painting trees or something, painting the forest. I'm of the view that we need to know what Normieville thinks. We need to know what Woketown thinks. We need to know what Trutherville thinks, and we need to know the propaganda lines spewed from their various outlets in each of these boxes. And so I study the propaganda influencers who are in positions of influence, who have insights because of their connections. So I know the who's who in terms of the programming class that are worth paying attention to leading into the election. And Loomer's marginal, but she's representative of a certain level of situational awareness. She's like definitely an operative, though, not a free thinker, not a truther in any sense, but kind of like Project Veritas. Like, they have the structure to uncover the truth, but it'll never happen. I think the job of James O'Keefe was to run it into the ground, spend all the money on choreography and dance parties and black SUVs so he looks cool driving around. That's literally what he spent all the money on. Yeah, I heard about the Kentucky shooter, Couch. He's still on the loose. We were talking about this earlier. What's with this Couch thing? And then J.D. Vance and Couch. Is there a code in here? Now, Kentucky shooter, fake or real? Generally, I would say fake until proven real. If it's an extraordinary claim, how extraordinary was it? I mean, it's not that extraordinary of a thing, but it seems very psyopy. I don't trust it at this moment. I have to look more into it. The name kind of stood out as kind of weird, though. We got Colt Gray, Joseph Couch. And if you caught the live stream the other night, this Colt Gray, the 14-year-old who did the shooting, there are so many things about it that are obviously clues. The blood on the cheek and all this stuff. Fascinating story. It's definitely a story, but it has way too many Trump shooting connections. Bach Precision says, what's your take on the guy on Twitter who does all these breakdowns? Ian Carroll. He's got a mustache, basic level truth drops, got viral quick. Yeah, my thing is this. A lot of them are probably good and probably providing valid puzzle pieces. The issue is they don't have the off-world stage perspective, so they're not putting it into the right context. So my position on it is you can be right, and it's like if you're in a universe of ideas and you take all the right arguments, you could arrive at the closest to truth as you can, but you're still in the box. So I see these individuals as truth-ertainers, truth-ertainment, especially if they go viral, because then they throw out like basically they turn it into conspiracy candy, junk food. It just doesn't do anything. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't have the right context. Barth Northeast says that's very, oh yes, the fake the Hell's Angels scam. Look how many hopium addicts were like, yay, the Hell's Angels are saving us. Saving you from what? The Venezuelan gangs didn't go to Aurora and take over the apartment complex. That's just a hype. It's a fake story. So they didn't say, so they're like, the Hell's Angels are saving us. These are the same people 4 years ago who said, the white hats are saving us. It's like there are no black hats. Or they're all black hats. Like they're not saving you. There's not a war going on behind the scenes on your behalf. And you see the same kind of naive mentality with these people like, oh, the Hell's Angels are coming to save us. And I looked into it. It took me 5 seconds. It took me 5 seconds to figure it out. There's a motorcycle rally in Durango. Motorcycles, and they think, oh, it's the Hell's Angels coming to save us. Sad. It's alternate reality. It's community generated fan fiction that they believe in. Strange times. But that's what you get when you have the pandemonium and the chaos of a world of total subjectivity with no objective standards. If the objective standard is the screen, which it is, the screen says it's real, so it's real. We're in the desert of the designated real. Then you can see how you could have a lot of people perceiving reality as fluid. Choose your own apocalypse. So in my reality, Timmy fell down the well. In my reality, Ed McMahon passed out big checks. In my reality, the Hells Angels saved me from the Venezuelan gangbangers who were going to take over my apartment complex. Osher has passed out 5 wrenches. Nothing major. Rome. Conscious daughter. Linda Cutter's Halebilly homestead. All new Blue Wrench Lodge members. Slick Rick says, anyone follow our X channel? I've heard of him. Yeah, here's Barth. Here's your wrench. Now, there's something else to bring up in this as well. I would say they want us to grasp onto subjectivity, and they lead you to simulation theory. So if you're digging in and you notice that the mediated worldview is just a model, then you might arrive at the conclusion that we live in a simulation, because you're accurately noting that the mass media presents a simulation. This is a major mind F. Think about it. You're like, wait a minute here. I'm watching reality through the screen. It's not adding up. Reality's not adding up. That's where simulation theory is. That's where Joe Rogan's like, there's no way this is real, man. We live in a simulation. This can't be real. So what they do is they find those who are, or they reach out to those, they target those who notice that the media presents a model, and they lead them astray with simulation theory. Oh, it's because nothing's real. The news is fake because nothing's real. That's right. Well, now you're technically a schizophrenic, and you're not a threat to the system. They've broken your mind. The truth of it is the media presents a simulation that is superimposed and taken as, it's taken as literal by media literalists, who are basically all the non-conspiracy theorists. CJ says, have you heard about the NFL player harassed by the cops before the game? Yeah, I saw the video, but I'll have to watch it and see where it goes. Now, there might be a reason to it. I just started watching this movie called something Ridge. Let me see if I can find the name of it. It's on Netflix. And it opens up where it looks like, I think it's some sort of, the police, Rebel Ridge. It is Rebel Ridge. So the police pull over this individual who's trying to bail his cousin out. And the cops are racist, and he's black, so they steal his money and beat him up and crash his bike. So it starts off with this major outrage, which is kind of similar to another movie I saw on Netflix. Was it Third Body Problem? It opens up with a similar scene. So that they are bringing these scenes up. So I'm wondering, maybe I'll have to look and see. Who was the player? Because now you have to be on the lookout for concurrent programming. Predictive programming, fine, it's there. But if you're paying attention real time, you'll notice that you'll have real-time media releases on the major platforms like Netflix that coincide with psyops on the world stage. Ryler says, the rulers want an apathetic population. There are many paths to apathy. One of those is extreme idealism and solipsism. Yeah, I've noticed this. Okay, this is why I've been critical of the synchromystic take. Synchromystics have not concluded, as we have, that the entertainment media is monolithically used to entrain minds to the news media. So they still ascribe media coincidences to simulation, to a supercomputer. And by doing so, they find themselves in the enlightened. Like, now I know. I've transcended the matrix, and look at all these lemmings, don't know what to think. And so they spend their time in a solipsistic haze and passively observe the folly of the masses and recognize that they alone know everything around them is fake. But they don't know, because what they have been given is a false explanation for why it's fake. And it has put them in the position of misattributing the fakery to something other than government. And it's not just America. It's like there's not even a practical, I mean, maybe I guess it's just the stories that people tell themselves that they need this structure, but it doesn't make sense to think about governments in plural. There's only one capital G government, and it controls everything. Okay, Tyreek Hill. I see. I'll look through it. It's got to be it has to be a psyop, especially if they bring up Trump. They blame Trump for Colin Kaepernick being a shitty quarterback. No, I'm just kidding. They blame Trump for Colin Kaepernick being blackballed from the NFL. And that is part of the narrative, by the way. Like, they did make that part of the dialectic there. It's part of the 1619 versus 1776 split. That's another one. We talked about the moral panicdemic, the satanic panics versus the pandemic model. Another one is 1619 versus 1776, which is where they're contrasting the idea of founding principles, conservative, maybe I guess you would even consider it to be the MAGA version of America, 1776, and those principles, versus 1619, which says, from the CRT perspective, that there's more to the story in America that's being excluded than not. And it doesn't make the 1776ers look very good. And so this is a perfect split. And the Colin Kaepernick character, interestingly, was the character during the Blackout Bowl. Now, this is significant. Blackout Bowl was the Super Bowl number 47. Went dark for 33 minutes. Right now, we're in the presidential race for president number 47. Leave the World Behind came out. The Obama production came out less than a year ago, and it predicted this blackout. So I'm looking at this blackout scenario, and it's interesting to note that after the Blackout Bowl, Colin Kaepernick was blackballed for kneeling during the national anthem. Well, this is before kneeling became a BLM thing, before the Derek Chauvin thing, and the symbolism of kneeling itself. But what's more, he has a publishing company, so he's totally aligned with the 1619 project. So it is a dialectic, 1619, 1776. And there's quite a lot more to the character Colin Kaepernick and the messaging that they attach to him as it relates to Black Lives Matter, as it relates to, again, when he was kneeling on the flag, that was foreshadowing. That was preparing us for this thing. What were we seeing here? I think what the Derek Chauvin is. Derek means hangman, chauvinism, Proud Boys, Western chauvinists. We were seeing the hangman of Western chauvinism in that George Floyd Derek Chauvin event. And then you could even extrapolate from this even further with the Leave the World Behind narrative and the 1619. See, in that movie, the boat that crashes on the beach when everything starts to fall apart is called the White Lion. It was the White Lion in 1619 that kicked off the transatlantic slave trade. Well, in San Francisco, next to the Golden Gate Bridge, they used to have a monument for Francis Scott Key, who wrote the national anthem. So here's the connection. Kneeling on the national anthem, BLM, Kaepernick. Francis Scott Key Monument at Golden Gate Bridge was vandalized by BLM. and it got replaced by a monument to the 1619 project. So they switched it out. But it's a story being told in monuments, in characters, in psyops, connected to the Francis Scott Key Bridge getting hit. Again, Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. So the bridge getting hit has numerous connections to this theory, this theme of America, the national anthem, the West, sinking, getting hit by the boat. Got hit by the Dolly. But in Leave the World Behind, it was the 1619 affiliated white lion that hit America, that hit the beach. So it's like the Titanic as a symbol, the West, but also the boat hitting the shore, crashing into it. It refers to this reckoning to come, the 1619 versus the 1776. Ryler05 says, Martin Luther King became Donald King. Yeah, I believe that one. CJ says they might be starting riots again. They normally do that in the summer. Yeah, it's a little late for riots, but it's an election year. And Joker 2 comes out on 10/4. We've had, okay, here's what we have predictive programming wise. We have DMZ, Netflix, which has a Kamala Harris archetype, and it's a civil war so it's like this Civil War theme with a black female president is prevalent. The movie Civil War, you have Trump in the White House, and it's all about him getting killed. And who kills him? A black female soldier. Again, Kamala stand-in. You have Man in Fool, Donald Trump as Charlie Coker, and this was deliberate. They engineered the whole thing to look like Trump. And he gets killed, he dies as a result of the machinations of this character who's the mayor of Chicago, who's obviously based on Obama. Obama did Leave the World Behind, released it on JFK's death day. There's so many connections here. It's pretty clear to me that the script, even Betty Pearson in Fallout, that's a Kamala stand-in. She is in the scene where they rig the election, take over the vault number 33, and they clean up the blood after the massacre, except for the little spot of blood on the Trump figurine's head on the foosball table. So we've been getting a lot of predictive programming for some kind of civil war chaos, Kamala being in the picture. What's up, gorillas? Says, love the pic, it feels 3D. Yeah, this is a watercolor version of an AI rendered image that I got on Bing. Blink Twice has a Kamala archetype, says CJ. Yeah, look, this is the thing too. This is one of the big secrets. This is why truthers are misled with mystic explanations for predictive programming. They don't want you to know that it has political objectives to it and that you can reverse engineer it. Like, we know for a fact that the Obamas are involved in predictive programming through Leave the World Behind, and you can see the messaging. It's super clear. But that these movies are, in fact, part of the mainstream media or mainstream mediation. It's part of the same process. You know, I get these people like conspiracy theory expert Mike Rothschild, who says there's no such thing as predictive programming. And I show him countless examples of concurrent programming. Debunk predictive programming as apophenia if you dare, try. But you can't do the same thing to concurrent programming. Sorry, there's just no way. You don't have a counter explanation to that. And we have a model that explains it. That not only explains it, you have to consider that our model of media, of how it works, our understanding of it, functions as such. We can make predictions. I can watch a movie knowing it's going to contain messaging and foreshadowing for future events. I just went and watched Fly Me to the Moon, and I noted in my notebook that they made numerous references to Boeing and Boeing disasters. Meanwhile, Boeing Starliner has this entire mission fraught with disaster, and they had to return the capsule empty. predictive programming shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't be able to watch a movie and say, hey, this movie is going to contain messaging for future events that are going to occur in the subsequent months, and we're going to see it in the news. And then it happens. And then after it happens, you still get told it doesn't exist. I mean, White Noise had extras in this movie about a train derailment and a toxic airborne event who were evacuated from their homes when it happened for real right after the movie came out. Like, what is that? Is that Life Follows Art? No. Psyops follow art. Psyops imitate life. That's all. So psyops imitate life, and psyops are predicated or based upon the art from the past. Yeah, I'll check out that Blink Twice movie. I've been watching the Napoleon a little bit too. Rilo05 says the same thing happened with the movie China Syndrome and the 3 Mile Island 1 week apart from each other. Yeah, I got a list of examples. My favorite one, House of the Dragon. Queen dies giving birth just as Roe v. Wade's overturned. Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco after Waco American Apocalypse comes out. And you watch the Waco American Apocalypse trailer, it's like, Waco was rated over 1.6 million rounds. And then the commercial, the trailer for that, it's out just as Trump is kicking off his campaign in Waco, calls it the last battle, and they're talking about 1.6. So 1.6 million rounds. January 6th. Fox News sued by Dominion, 1.6 billion. All kinds of clues, 1.6. Narrative. And then, of course, coincidences like Trump kicking off his campaign there. And these things are significant in many and predictive, because then what happens on the anniversary of Waco? What happened on 4/19? Trump's in court, and a guy sets himself on fire outside of the courthouse. And this is the anniversary, of course, of Waco, of the Waco incineration of Dave Koresh, 33, who is believed to be Jesus. Anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. But we have so many examples of this as well. And also the timing of movies that are released that have messaging that correspond. Like Barbie and Godzilla. Couldn't be further apart, right? But then the media adds together, because they come out at the same time. They create this meme for Barbieheimer. And what is Oppenheimer about? It's about the destroyer of worlds. Then you have Godzilla, which Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. And then you have Barbie, which just because the timing would have no other connection to it until you dig a little deeper. And the themes here are pretty clear. Barbie, by the way, has a lot of Kubrick references. At the beginning, it has the monolith. That movie is so occult, esoteric, full of programming. If you haven't watched it, it's not my kind of movie. I would never have watched it. It just wouldn't have been something I'd care to see. But because of what we're doing here, I felt like I had to watch it. And I did, and I realized, okay, they just introduced an idol to the masses. They introduced the OTO, the Templar, the Satanic, the Thelemite goddess. Barbie is the representation, the physical embodiment, incarnate. In the movie, she goes from a doll to becoming a real woman. But she is the embodiment of the Scarlet Woman, of the Magdalene, Isis, or the newest iteration, Babylon. Yeah, Barbie was funnier than Oppenheimer. Better than Oppenheimer. Didn't hit me. It didn't really strike me as anything more than preparing people for the visuals, for the nuke, reminding people of how bad it is. But no, it wasn't as good as Barbie as far as entertainment value. Barbie was kind of, it was, I don't want to say it was funny. I mean, it was funny in certain ways, but it was almost psychotic. Like, this is what they really think. There's just some parts to it that were, like, thinking back. Like at the end, Ken is still a Ken doll. Men are superfluous. Barbie becomes a real woman. There's a, I think there's a subtext here. If you connect Barbie to Jane Mansfield, to Marjorie Cameron, which we can do, to the meaning of this all, she does represent the destruction of the nuclear family. That was one of the themes at the very beginning, where she's standing where the monolith is. 2001 Space Odyssey intro. And these little girls are playing with their dolls. And they're told that motherhood is drudgery. It's a lifetime of slavery, chained to the kitchen. And they start banging the heads of their babies on the rocks. And then Barbie lowers her glasses. She's winking with one eye, does the 666 with her hand. She's got a black and white striped swimsuit. But what you saw there was they were rejecting these roles. And so that's what Barbieland kind of was. The men were superfluous, but they're, the Ken dollification of the American male. And we're talking about, like, okay, here's another example of predictive and current programming that relates to this. So Ken is like the ideal male now. And now we have Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate and his brother are being charged for human trafficking, rape, misogyny. They have their army of misogynists, their little tater tots across the world, where they're fomenting this whole culture of misogyny. Now, interestingly enough, there's a movie coming out next month that the main character is a psychopath with toxic masculinity who's based on Andrew Tate. And the director had no idea that Tate would be charged with crimes around this time. But I think they brought up Tate to bring him down. I think they elevated this parody of extremism, mass marketed him, pushed him on everybody. So I wouldn't have ever come across an Andrew Tate. But now he's everywhere. He's been interviewed by Tucker, by Candace. He's been basically thrown into the right-wing echo chambers 24/7 for the last few years. And now they're tearing him down. And this looks like an operation. Now, he's a chess player. His dad's CIA, a chess player. They play both sides, black and white. Like Donnie Darkin. Donnie Darkin was exposed as being anti-Trump and pro-Trump. And he's connected to Candace Owens and Donald Trump Jr. So at the top, they're playing these roles. And I think his role was elevate these ideas that we don't like anymore, that we want to purge from society. We're going to honeypot anybody attached to these ideas, and then we're going to throw them down to the ground. We're going to bring them down. So they're destroying the Andrew Tate idol. And all these tater tots are going to have to abandon it or take the label of being rape apologists. Like, they're put in a really bad position. Constant Elevation says you should paint a penguin flying on a wrench with a broomstick. Yeah, put it through bing.com/images/create. Send me the prompted AI image, and I will paint it. Private commissions. I used to have people send me photos to paint, and I stopped doing painting their homes, or their like, I need something a little more interesting to make an interesting painting. So if you do a AI prompted image, I will definitely paint it. But I think the Taint brothers were controlled opposition by turning masculinity into toxic masculinity, a total caricature. And I see some of them just like, well, the great entrepreneurs. Not really. There's a difference between free market and exploitation, between filling a consumer need and bad contracts and manipulating people and abusing your employees. I don't know. I think there's some unfair competition in there. Thanks, Constant Elevation. Yeah, I'm going to be including more. So if you pick up any of my books, I do ship them out with bookmarks. Yeah, Adam Cook. Tate did say his father was a CIA, that he said everything in the news was fake. He did say that everything was fake and that the masses are kept in the dark. So that then you have to wonder then, well, how in the dark is Tate. Well, they're not going to be charged with bad thought crimes. They're being charged with I think it has to do with, there's no statute of limitations on certain things. I think on certain types of, some of the BBC stories, and look, I don't believe it's true on either side. It could all be just a construct. But the stories coming out are that he and his brother would outsource the abuse to another girl, another woman, to beat the other women. And a lot of strangling and a lot of rape threats and a lot of threats to impregnate them and hold. This is another one. Think about it. In one of his tweets or one of his messages, they threatened to impregnate performing girls and not let her leave. So look how well this ties in to the idea that the right wing wants to take away Roe v. Wade. They want to take away abortion so they can control the women. That's the version that the left is being sold. And it them that Andrew Tate is literally trafficking women and teaching people how to, at least in the context of his company, how to keep them from leaving, how to hide the passwords. I mean, it's all manipulation. But they'll do the guilt by association, and they're going to, I think it's not a coincidence that Russell Brand was hit with similar accusations, which I don't believe for a few reasons. Like, I think a lot of these things are psyops. You know, we get these events all the time, and just because they're not involving body counts doesn't mean that they're not psyops. And I think a lot of these are likely fake. Like, I'm pretty sure, and I did a pretty thorough breakdown of it, that the Me Too versus Marilyn Manson is fake. You know, his girlfriend, Rose McGowan, started the Me Too, which may have been a grift in itself. But interestingly, Evan Wood, the one that accused him of things and did this documentary about him, she started a group called, I think it was like the Phoenix Act, which was similar to the Me Too thing, about eliminating statutes of limitations. But like, I get the idea that her whole thing was fake and contrived in a PR stunt, like kind of a grotesque PR stunt. But I think it kind of falls in line, perhaps even has the same directors as the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I mean, if you look at today, the attention economy, there's just so little time to go around. They can't keep you focused 24/7 on school shootings. So they've been doing this forever. Look at the Manson thing. And that's a whole other story. You know, I brought up Margot Robbie from the Barbie movie, and she played Sharon Tate in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Super symbolic role, especially considering Polanski, Rosemary's Baby, the fact that Susan Atkins was gutted by a satanic witch. Susan Atkins killed Sharon Tate by the story. Susan Atkins pictured with Anton LaVey in the church. Adam says, women threw themselves at Brand, no need for. Yeah, I think so too. See, what I'm thinking with him, they may have created this. I think this is, you have to think like Edward Bernays. And the whole idea of using PR stunts to influence human behavior. You get feminists to associate the cigarette with liberation. So if they're trying to get rid of a certain type of masculinity or certain concepts of it, or masculinity itself, how would you do it? And I think we're looking at what you would call iconoclasm. They're just building up these icons, and I think we see it all the time. And it might be standard operating procedure that we're looking at a controlled demolition. That's why I'm saying Elon Musk is a fall guy for free speech. I do not believe he's fighting for free speech. If you believe that, we went to the moon. You probably think he's sending stuff into outer space. But if you know about fake space, then you know that space is a metaphor for mind control. And there's no way he's fighting for free speech. And if you look at what disease X as a construct is doing, and the rage virus, and where it's emanating from, and how it's going to justify mass censorship, and they may not even have to censor the infrastructure, like flag everything. What they're going to do is they're just going to engineer minds that self-censor. Think about 1984. The version of it was this dark future. There's going to be cameras everywhere. You won't be able to hide. Well, they achieved that. But instead of putting cameras everywhere and making it compulsory, they conditioned everyone to put themselves on camera. They conditioned for social media. So we are way worse than Orwell ever said, engineering a society of people who will voluntarily submit to censorship by putting themselves into media boxes for their own safety. Catch any mind viruses, and people already voluntarily do that. We're seeing it becoming more of a norm. And I think that X is being set up to be the bad example, so people adopt this. You got entire countries shutting off X for this reason. And so this mind virus hoax is I think, going to be implemented here very soon, based on the monkey stuff. All right, well, we're going to be live to take phones later on today. I will probably work painting a little bit more later on. It's not quite 100% complete. Here's the image I'm working off of. A few more details and stuff, but anyway, thanks for hanging out. I will leave this video up. I don't think we crossed any lines, and we'll take calls likely about